Good morning. My name is Alex Kovbasko. I'm director at NPACT, and we are starting our event today about the diversity and growing the bottom line. Together with me, I have Dr. Rainer Seider, our sponsor and partner in the project AsiaBerlin. And of course, a big thank you to the GIZ and our partners at GIZ who have made it possible to work on the women entrepreneurship topic in Berlin and India. Rainer, you had just finished in September a really big event, AsiaBerlin Summit. Can you tell us a bit more about what is AsiaBerlin and what do you do during the summit?
Yeah, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, MPACT, for having me here today. I'm very happy that I can share our experience about AsiaBerlin and the AsiaBerlin Summit we had in September. So AsiaBerlin, our activities are driven by the Berlin Senate with different partners to strengthen the ties between the Berlin startup ecosystem and Asian startup ecosystems, to give more opportunities to startups to share their international experiences and to grow in networks of international cooperation with Asia. The idea is to give them more opportunities and scaling into markets, getting finances and talents from Asia to Berlin. And within this AsiaBerlin activities, we have delegation trips, not this year, and events organized by NPACT. So thanks for doing that together with us and with us for strengthening the ecosystem. And we have the AsiaBerlin Summit, which is once a year the annual main event which we are organizing together with other partners here in Berlin. And this year we had the AsiaBerlin Summit as a hybrid event. So we had people joining us offline, so physically and online, especially for Asia. It's a big advantage to give the opportunity to join also from Asia without moving to Berlin. And with the travel restrictions, of course, it was not possible from Asia to travel to Berlin. And now we have the possibility to use a hybrid format, so we gave the people online and offline the same chance to participate in the event. And so it's a whole holistic approach, having smaller events throughout the year, like today's event on diversity, and on the same time having a big event once a year with the AsiaBerlin Summit.
And as this is quite a new field, we've been doing this only for half a year, what are the learnings from your experience?
So the learnings are, first of all, of course, it's useful to have the AsiaBerlin Summit as a hybrid format. And we will do that even after Corona. So when the people can travel again to Berlin, we will, of course, not lose the audience in Asia, which can easily join us just by getting online to the event. But of course, what is important for the activities we do here is the physical meetings, the networking. That makes it much easier to connect to each other and to build trust, which is necessary, especially in the distance cooperation between Asia and Europe. Because if you just meet online, it's very difficult to build up trust, to overcome the barriers and national, cultural distance barriers we still do have between Asia and Berlin or Europe. So that's one of the big learnings. The other one is that we reached to mobilize a strong ecosystem in Berlin. And we have lots of Asians in Berlin who are working anyhow between Asia and Berlin, and they're quite active. They got active also on the summit. So on the summit also we had very few people who were traveling, especially to Berlin. There are lots of Asians anyhow in Berlin who are building bridges in their jobs or together with us towards Asia and to help combining the ecosystem of Berlin to connecting the ecosystem of Berlin to Asia. So I think that's one of the strong learnings of the summit and also the AsiaBerlin activities throughout the year, that we have a lot of AsiaBerlin already in Berlin. So we don't need always to travel because the people are here and more are founding or working as a talent here in the ecosystem, and they are naturally building bridges now together with us.
I think this is a really good segue to our topic of today. We know that every fifth founder in Berlin is from the migrant or foreign background. And today we'll talk about diversity. Maybe a couple of words from your side. Any wishes to the audience?
Yeah, so thank you again for the opportunity. Because diversity is a real important topic for us. We had already diversity track during the summit, where we had different approaches to diversity, because diversity is very complex and there are many aspects of diversity. Today we have female founders, the female founder aspect very strong on the panel. So that's very gender equality, gender diversity is a very important aspect of diversity. But of course there are, as you told, there are other aspects as international diversity, which is also important, and diversity as such is important, as we know, for companies, but also of course from an economic or macroeconomic point of view for Berlin, which I represent here. It's important to connect or to have a strong ecosystem. And a strong ecosystem consists also in using the diverse parts of the population, for instance, in the startup ecosystem as founders, but also to integrate, to have good and resilient companies which are better performing if they are diverse in such. So having, for instance, using the amount of women founding companies, which is too low in Berlin, as we know. That's one aspect, but the other one is also for a business itself, it's good to have a diverse team, which of course is not just women, but should be diverse, international men, women, and other aspects of diversity integrated in the team. So it's in a social point of view to put into the game of the economy all parts of the society, which is important for me representing the Berlin Senate, but also for the company itself. And of course, we will explore in the next months also other parts of diversity so gender diversity and international diversity. And I think that's very exciting to do the story together with Impact and to look broader into the ecosystem of Berlin and to look more on the diverse aspects, which is very fruitful for the company and for the economy.
Thank you very much for joining us, Rainer, today.
Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward to an exciting panel discussion.
Me too.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Rainer has already mentioned, the companies that have at least diverse, either gender diverse or by ethnicities, they can overperform their competitors by up to 29%. Today with us, we have speakers from India and Germany. AsiaBerlin Network consists of India, China, Singapore, the Philippines, Thailand, and Germany, Berlin. And we try to involve in every single event that we do at least one other country to get a perspective from the professionals, from our colleagues there on the ground. Today we have joining us from Berlin, Dr. Gesa, and she's on the board member of the German Startup Association. Next to her is Hanna Asmussen, who is the co-founder of Localyze, a Hamburg startup that provides support for relocation of the international talent or international hiring and transfer of the employees. Gesa has invested into the Localyze, so this is where I'd like to have a conversation about the role of investors in supporting and driving forward the women founders or other diverse entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. Thank you for being with us. It's a pity that we can't have you here in the studio live, but as you might know, Germany is going into the other soft lockdown starting Monday. So due to current situation, we are taking the events online fully. Gesa, Hanna, I'd like to hear from you. What is your perspective on the other aspects of diversity that we should keep in mind when hiring or when looking at the entrepreneurs?
Hi, thank you for having me. I guess I'll start. The aspect that, for me, I do a lot with female founders. So the aspect of female founders is one that I know very well. Obviously, diversity includes many other things like age diversity or diversity of background, et cetera, et cetera. But let me just pinpoint the aspects that I see with gender diversity, because you can just take those and copy paste those into all the other diversity aspects. So why do we need more female founders? Why do we need more female investors? At the end of the day, there's four main reasons. The first one being a really easy one. It just generates more value add in the whole economy if you have more women participating. The second one being that there's several studies that show that female founders have very high ROIs with their companies, and that they generate more revenue and also have less downfalls. So their companies they survive. And the third reason being that there's just too few products and services addressing women. So if we have, it's just a big market chance and a growth chance that lies there. And the last one being, and then I'm finished, sorry for talking so long, being that also studies show that women tend to found their companies in areas which have a societal benefit. And if we see it from that angle, it's also a big necessity of including female founders. I'm done. Sorry for talking so long.
Really good points. From our understanding, there is usually an argument that we would like to support women founders, but there's just not enough pipeline. So how do you find the women founders you would like to support?
Well, I see that as untrue. The thing is, I started Auxxo because I saw that the whole investment scene is very male dominated, and the startup scene also. And I thought, well, if I use my similarity bias, maybe I can find an area which is really attractive. And at the end, I can just give you an overview of our portfolio, which is we have 10 companies. 7 of those have female founders. 2 of those have founders with migration background, 2 apart from the 7 ones, and we just have 1 team which is male and German. And so we don't have a pipeline problem as Auxxo, but obviously the numbers show a different world. And I just think 15.7% female founders in Germany is not a lot, but I can just say if you are a female investor, you do get more deal flow in this area. So basically, also if there's male investors wanting more deal flow in this area, feel free to approach us. We can help.
Wonderful. We have also an angel investor from India joining us. I would say quite a recent comer to the investor scene. Sayali Karanjkar is the co-founder of the PaySense, and she has exited with over $185 million deal at the beginning of this year, PaySense, and now is a venture partner in a boutique field. We also have Puja Kohli joining us, who is the expert in HR, years of experience, and Puja has been researching and working with gender, generational, regional, and cultural diversity for over a decade. Welcome, and Sayali, maybe a question to you. As an entrepreneur and now moving to investment field, do you see many other women founders that you would like to support, especially in fintech in India?
Yes, Alex, thanks for having me. I do feel that Gesa said the right point by saying that being a female investor yourself does open up the pipeline. Aspiring women founders do find me. They do talk about who's going to hear them with an unbiased mind or with even a pro-biased mind, right? Like I'm biased towards a woman founder. I see more positives. So who is going to do that for me? And then I hear more about the women founders who are coming. So I feel like whether it is fintech or other fields, there is no dearth of women founders. I think there are many who are aspiring, and there are many in hiding. They're the idea that if somebody is getting funded, even as a single woman founder or a women founder only team, like 2 or 3 women only founders, if they start getting more and more exposure and better funding, then I think there are more that are waiting to get started. Today, they hear of more difficulties versus more opportunities. They hear more negatives versus more encouraging points and positive points. I think, I believe I would love to change that. This event is doing that, to change that perception. And I think we can together make that difference. I don't think there is a dearth in the pipeline at all.
That's great to hear. And then for those women or maybe minorities that would like to grow in their careers but not start their own business, how can you as a founder support them and make your teams more diverse? So Hanna, you work a lot with the Relocating International, so I guess there might be some learnings you could share with us.
I think like from the perspective of the basically our clients, there is little influence that we have on that side because of course we only step in when a company decided who to hire. But the factor that we can control is within our own company, and we have 3 founders, all female. Within our management board, we have 5, also all female. So I think it really, what Gesa also said, like being a female founder, of course, you also attract more female talent, which is great. So this is one really important diversity factor for us, and also diversity by origin. So I think because we do relocation, we work with international people. It's really important to also have an international team. Right now, I think we have 8 nationalities in a team of 15. So this is super important because, of course, we also design a product that is used by people around the world. And I think having more input and more ideas was super important for us.
Puja, in your career, you've worked with companies with different size. Where would you suggest for the founder to start, whether it's a small company or a mid-size?
I was just looking at a couple of statistics, and I think everybody's been adding to that. Some of the survey reports, and I want to begin from there because it'll give a background to the context. There's a survey report which shows that 77% of the startups in the US are white, male, Caucasian. In Europe, it's about 84%. Less than 1% are African or Hispanic, or any of the other ethnic. In India, I couldn't really find a pervasive report, but there was a recent report by Trifecta Global, which is very recent, when they sort of looked at about 45 startups across various sectors, and the participation of women is just 22%. So when we sort of really look at that, the gap is really huge. It's not a gap which is really small, and it also begins from the top. And as a founder, it's all about the values that you bring to the table, the kind of team that you want to create, and the kind of inclusion practices that you want to bring into your startup. When startups at the early stage, they are obviously they are focused on, trying to monetize their product, go to market, raise funding, etc., all of that. And a number of, diversity and inclusion is really not on top of one's head. But if one gets it right and at an early stage, because inclusion is a mindset. And when you bring it, and especially with my work at different, since you mentioned different stages, when I started working with corporates, it's very difficult to unlearn and build a culture when it's already cast in stone. But if you can start early and create an open culture, create a culture where women are included far earlier in the journey, whether as a co-founder or as people in significant roles within the team. Or as well as looking at cultural differences in India. Of course, while we talk about ethnic minorities globally, in India, we are very regionally diverse. The country is is so diverse that every state, we have so many languages. So how do you get, start with a mindset towards inclusion right from the beginning? Diversity is also about being intentional. And that's why I always look at it, it's a value. You can't, I mean, a metric comes when you have obviously a significant talent pool, but it begins with, having a core value of respect, appreciating differences, and recognizing it earlier. Uh, when people say, how do you, what is the ROI of diversity? And, you can have a lot of metrics about profitability and productivity. But I sort of look at it more in terms of diversity of thinking styles, and how does it lead to innovation? Uh, you know, if you're going to be successful, you're going to get the money, you're going to be profitable. But when you appreciate differences and you build a heterogeneous workplace, it adds a rich pool of ideas and creativity. So I'm going to stop there. It's a complex subject, but it's really about building that mindset much earlier rather than late, because culture is something, which is, once it's set, it's very difficult to, reset it. It requires a lot of transformative effort, and a lot of larger companies are constantly organizing, reorganizing, transforming themselves, because it is quite tough when you haven't looked at it earlier. Thank you.
I see. Thank you. Thank you so much. I see Gesa nodding. Would you like to add something to that? What are the tools, approaches that the companies can start with?
I think Puja said it all at the end. I think as this is my personal understanding, that if you set up a quota in your company, that's a start. You can say for yourself, okay, I want to have just this % of diverse people in my company, and then you can define what it is, and through all levels, because as we can see that often, I just know it from the VC world, if the limited partner is female or someone pushing for diversity, then there's a trickle down effect with that. So try to keep it all throughout the whole company. That's basically the starting point that I would choose, but this is really my personal opinion. Everything else what Puja said is exactly right, and I actually have nothing to add.
Have you seen in the Berlin scene the investors that are having this ethos and are strongly suggesting that their portfolio companies are hiring more diverse or have diversity policies?
Not yet, to tell you the truth. But there is talks going on right now in the whole startup scene, in the whole investment scene, and we're pushing it from all sides. And I'm also on the board of the Startup Association. Diversity is a big pillar for us that we are tackling. And for example, we have a podcast where we feature a female founder once a month, which goes to 10,000s of people in Germany, just to push that. And from the political side, I'm also trying to get as many people involved in this diversity topic. I think it's an effort. Everyone has to come together and push for this.
Sayali, your company grew from 15 people to 400 in 5 years. How did you address this?
We did have metrics for each of the teams: sales, operations, customer service, engineering, data science. We did have an incredibly tough time coming through on those metrics for the tech teams. We did have difficulty, but we kept trying hard. We found leadership, like VP level, management level, people who were like, our head of UX design was a female leader. We had a head of data analytics as a female founder, but we did have a lot of difficulty for various reasons. So I did talk to a lot of talent. And one of the reasons that many young women brought to me was that they believe that startups will not have a good work-life balance. And that's not what they want at this time in their lives. So that's something I tried to work with, but honestly, it is not easy. The startup world does have a very different pace. In different teams, there is different requirement of travel, of meeting targets or quarterly targets, monthly targets, so having some really bad days at the end of the month or the quarter. So there are some of those elements which do make it quite difficult to commit to a work-life balance as a leader hiring a person. So I do require some flexibility, and then I'm flexible on my end to have work from home options or being able to plan it options. So I think what I learned is that how do I make it more predictable or easy to plan for the women to then think. So the unplanned long hours is a big problem. The planned long hours is not a problem. So with that learning, I tried working on and doing something so that they can then work with their families, work with their partner, and figure out childcare, figure out all the things that they need to create a workspace around it. So I think it was difficult and challenging in the beginning, but slowly we made some learnings, and then we have had better, results with women across all the functions. But indeed, it requires a lot more effort, a lot more like purposeful uh, thinking in how do we solve for this. And in the very first year, when it's all about survival, in the first 2 years, when it's all about survival of the startups, it's hard to make that a priority. So it does slip up, right? I think I'm being honest that despite being a female founder, it was not always top of my agenda. But what was top of my agenda is to bring the conversation forward always. So at least the conversation about the women in the company, how are they feeling? Like if they are dealing with brotherhood in engineering team, then bringing that forward, not just with the women, but also with the men. At least doing that was something that I feel good about leading constantly. But it was a constant conversation, right? Whether it was in tech teams where they left out the women when they went on their beer breaks, or whether it was in the sales team who partied a lot longer at night on their travel nights versus when they were local and everybody was there. Some of these conversations changed some of these habits, and at least the women who were in our company felt a lot better, and then they refer in more and more women, right? If it's a good culture that you create where you can respect. Lastly, I would add the thing to respect, especially in India, I've seen it often, is that many women don't want to be managers because they have softer personalities and they feel that they would not be appreciated as managers. Nobody's listening to them. They have softer voices at the table, or in an alpha male room, they're not making themselves heard, so they just don't want to deal. So I think teaching everybody, whether around the table, that people have different styles of putting forward their thoughts, and these diverse thoughts are important to us. So even if somebody is not the loudest voice in the room, everybody else needs to take a deep breath and listen. It is important to do that. And I think that training took a while because people are used to being very high energy and trying to talk on top of each other's voices. So I think some of that behavioral training has brought us a long way.
There is research that even when women get into senior positions, they may be paid less than their male peers, and often this stems from having the maternity leave penalty. And one of the countries that has achieved the almost closing the pay gap is actually Iceland, that is now suggesting that both men and women take equal time for maternity and paternity leaves. Sweden and other Nordic countries, they are going a similar way. It's still not equal time because essentially if both parents are taking the time off to care for the child, that means that they're both losing the time in their careers, right? So what is your take on this, and how does India, do you have paternity leave?
Okay, can I just add, and it's interesting because this was another data that I sort of was calibrating against. We had, in India, we moved from 3 months to 6 months maternity leave, which happened just about a year back. And that has significantly impacted women, not positively, but negatively. The research or the data shows that we actually lost 10% of women from the workforce, and maternity bias is creeping in very strongly. And it's very interesting because I also work for large corporates, and how many times I keep hearing this as a pain point because managers aren't able to manage a 6-month break of women from work. Startups have to pay for about 26 weeks of leave. It's a paid time off. So obviously it's increased the financial burden from 3 months to 6 months. and people struggle because they need a replacement, because you can't, if someone's doing an active role, whether in a startup or a large organization, how does work still continue? So interestingly, while this was a very positive step to increase the maternity benefit from 3 to 6 months, unfortunately, at the implementation level, it's been very, very gray. And that sort of also created a lot of other issues and biases creeping up a lot more about saying that, if I hire a woman, I will, and if she's going to get married, then she's going to have a baby and all of that. So I just wanted to add that, because this has been one of those big dilemmas that's been unleashed in India when the maternity benefit changed.
What about men? Do they need the paternity leave?
They do, and I think the gap that we have is in India, paternity leave is from 2 days to a week. So, until you don't give men equal time off, which is really a philosophical change, a social change, we won't really see equal participation, because then the burden of, childcare and all of that, then rests on the women. So until men don't get a substantial paternity leave, it'd be very, really difficult to balance, this and allow for a non-biased issue. I also came across just like a last bit. Grubhub, it's an example, and if you read this example, the CEO of Grubhub, as a startup, one of the things that he did was that he actually built a very significant paternity leave, for his organization. And it's one of the startups that is really quoted because he recognized paternity leave, because he's a family man, and for him, spending time with his kids is very precious. So he brought in that culture to his organization very earlier on, and it's one of the success stories that get quoted, and you can read it. It's out there. And that's really, as I was mentioning, it's so much about, the ethos and the culture that you'd like to establish. And as a founder, it's extremely important to start thinking through these things at the early stage, so that you can build this, ethos and an inclusive culture as you move along. So that's from my side. I thought I'd like to just add that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sayali. When we had a call beforehand, you had a very interesting example.
Yeah. So I was talking to you, Alex, and I would really like to share with everybody that with male paternity, I think there are a changing number of men who want that option. My brother, for example, and I've been spending some time with him over the lockdown, would love to be a full-time parent, would love to take a long sabbatical at least for when his children are very young, but not really an option. It is a very difficult conversation with management, and it is a very difficult conversation with HR, because they don't know where to plug that in, childcare. So there have been conversation about giving optional, that 6 months that is in maternity, give it optional to see which parent wants it. And I tried doing that with my 400 people organization, where we had at least a few babies being born, and none of the men wanted to take it. They didn't want to share the burden at all. So I think I at home have a rare example, which makes me think that there is a better future ahead. And but however, there is a lack of social understanding. They think that maybe he's not doing so well, that's why he's taking a step for his children, not because he wants to, and he would rather like to do it and take this break and then come back again to his career. So it's being judged quite negatively in India, at least still. And I've spent more than a decade in the US, and I know it's the same there. I wish it would change, but as of now, I think we can only see some beacons of hope like him. I hope there is more soon.
You bring me up to the next point. How can we change the system? What needs to happen? Or is it the action on the governmental level? Is it the both bottom and up pressure to kind of reshape the thought in the society around this? I'd love to hear from Gesa and Hanna on this. And our audience, you can also ask questions using the Q&A button, and then I'll include it live.
Yeah, happy to start. I think it is like it's always best when it comes from multiple sides. I think, of course, there are always things that governments can do and enforce to maybe accelerate the process. But I also think that it's really important to create role models and also to to drive the conversation within companies, for example. So one thing that I, for example, noticed is that I think like the startup world in Germany is often not attractive to women because it's it doesn't offer that much security, and for example, sometimes you just get temporary contracts, and within a lot of the bigger corporates, you basically get a lifelong contract, and then it's just more stable, more security. And I think this is something where it has to be of course, like there has to be a balance. Like a startup, I think, can never offer that level of stability, but at the same time we can create an environment where we do things like offer paternity and maternity leaves, and also talk to people, and like I don't know, like offer longer contracts, do things that maybe like create an environment that is more beneficial. And I think that way, just to be conscious about it, and to do an effort and really see like, okay, what do people want? What can I do to maybe attract more women? And that way to create role models, and that way to just participate and do a share. But I think at the same time, especially because like it's always easy to say, I don't know, like I just looked at all the applicants, and then the male applicant was just better, so I hired him. Like if there's no enforcement, it's just very easy to hide behind those arguments, because I think like the bias is always there. And if you have a company where the whole management level is male, it's really hard to overcome that bias, I think. I would say it's both directions.
Gesa, German Startup Association is doing the Women Founders Monitor. What are some of the common challenges that are flagged by women founders?
Well, we actually figured out that there's two buckets that you can put the challenges into, and those are the structural bucket and the cultural bucket. And these buckets are, I can go on and talk a lot about them, but just to give you like very specific examples of these, if we're talking about the cultural bucket, it's the antiquated gender stereotypes that we still have in Germany. And there are so many levers that we can use. Specifically, if I'm talking about the government could help to bring coding or founding courses to schools and universities really early. And for example, unconscious bias trainings for teachers, and also the point that you said, having some kind of leveled out percentage of how much taking care of the kids by men and women, that's also a part. And if we're talking about structural, the second part, it's the for female founders, it's just the whole system that they're in, which could be a lot better. We found out that female founders have 6 hours per week on average less time for their company than male founders. So decreasing the amount of childcare that needs to be done by the women compared to what the men are doing, that would be great, by, for example, increasing the quality and quantity of daycare and schools. That's just one idea, or also having women and men take the same time off as you suggested. That's another thing. And then another structural, just to give you another example, is access to financing. That's something that we could really change. It's just a lot more difficult for female teams to get access to investments, and especially in venture capital or business angels or state funding, women are clearly underrepresented. and just male teams get in Germany in 2019 got, or in Europe, I think 92% of all of the financing from these buckets. So there is a gender bias, and there's many things that we can do. And there's one thing the state can do, for example, use its power as a limited partner. And there are state or half-state funds, like in Germany, it's Coparion, the High-Tech Gründerfonds, and KfW Capital, which could, for example, get more women into their management and press for that. That's just an example of things that we can do.
Thank you for that. Hanna, would you like to add something?
I think that was that included everything.
Puja, when you were working with the corporates, how do you change somebody's mindset? For example, is it trainings that there needs to be for the senior management to be more open-minded and pay attention to more women candidates or candidates from the diverse backgrounds?
When startups, they'll become mid-sized and you become a large corporate. So when you're mid to large size, you have to be very conscious about a wide variety of things. So of course, a leader has to be a role model, and we've spoken about it. If starts very young, that's the best. But you have to walk the talk. But apart from that, you have to sort of really look at, and Gesa mentioned unconscious biases, and I think that's a topic that I'm sort of I do believe is really the crux, because when we talk about diversity, we talk about demographics, we talk about men, women. It's more of a talent pool, but inclusion is really a mindset, and it comes from within. It's a belief, and inclusion is a belief that it's either your nature or it needs to be nurtured. And if it has to be nurtured, then you have to do it in a very structured manner. It's not going to happen randomly, and especially in larger organizations. You have very diverse subcultures, mindsets that exist. So building an inclusive culture will include looking at sensitization of the workplace through talking about biases, discriminatory practices, prejudices, stereotypes that exist. So you have to address it. You have to have candid, authentic conversations around it. Call out what is acceptable, what is really not acceptable, to sort of build that culture. Second is you have to sort of really look at, are you hiring right? I mean, a lot of things that we discover in our consulting work is that managers intuitively, and this could be an India use case, but I'm sure it's everywhere else. You want to hire people who are culturally very similar to you. So you end up, very unconsciously, when you look at a person's resume, your bias may start from there. You will start having a bias. Does he have the kind of degree that resonates with you? Is he from the state or city that you come from? Do you all speak a common language, a common culture? So when organizations become larger, they need to start looking at all their people practices, look at hiring, even look at performance biases. There's a lot of data out there where during performance appraisals, how do women get measured? What's the kind of language that is used when you discuss a woman's performance compared to a man's performance, right? What are the barriers that you bring out when a woman is not successful versus when a man is not successful, when you're sort of calibrating? So it's hiring, it's managing performance, it's being very intentional towards careers. It is true that women, are not very intuitive networkers. So how do you sort of build that potential? How do you focus on building certain competencies, very intentionally? I'm speaking a lot about gender because, we were talking about gender, but then this sort of moves it when you obviously get people with disabilities. We are in India also talking a lot about LGBTQ, the lesbian, transgender, gay population. slowly conversations around this is coming in. We are very regionally diverse, but not very inclusive. And, so talking about different regions. So with each element of diversity, you have to really build that mindset. And it ends up becoming an agenda. And of course, it ends up having to be managed as a program, because unfortunately, these things don't really happen organically. And you have to sort of build it with a vision, a mission. And I would suggest the same to startups, that you start with your mission statement or a vision statement, and build your D&I goals right up front. It doesn't have to be as complex as a large corporate, because you're not there. But do you acknowledge it? Do you recognize it? And once you recognize it, you will start taking small steps towards making your company inclusive.
Can I add one thing just to that? Because I saw this article last week and I really liked it, also about job descriptions. And there was this VC in Germany that wanted to hire an intern, and they only had 12% women applying for this. So they asked a group called Female Founders from Austria to help them to change the wording in their job description to see if they could get more women to apply. And actually, they did lots of changes. I don't want to go into the details, but through these changes, they increased the amount of, or the percentage of women applying from 12 to 40. And that's, just starting by that, it's a small thing, but women tend to see a job description, and if not all 10 points apply to them, then they will definitely not apply. And if a man sees a job description, if 6 things are in the things that apply to him, then he will probably apply. So
no, that's a great example, Gesa. And we have tools today, and there are technology tools which actually start looking at whether when you're reading a job description, what kind of words have been used. Are these more masculine sounding words? And you actually can use, you have a lot of hiring tools today, AI enabled, which can also remove biases. And when we talk about the startup world, and we typically talk about tech startups, you can start even using tools. You may not really have the kind of people that large corporates have who are thinking about this subject the whole time, as I heard Sayali mentioning, because, but you can augment this through tools as well. And absolutely, and I think that's a great example, Gesa, and you do have tools there which can start looking at these practices and indicating the biases, which can be then neutralized as you move forward.
There's also one thing that I want to add, because especially in hiring, oftentimes for specific roles, where these also do actively outreach to candidates. And I think there is one other interesting diversity aspect that it can bring in. Because if you start looking, if you think like in the startup field, there are not enough women, then you actively have to look at other sectors and bring people in from other backgrounds. So you directly add another diversity dimension as well. Yeah. And I think this is interesting. In Germany, it's a bit of a problem, I think, because people are not that accustomed to switch career paths and industries, etc. But I think that is definitely something, because if you reach out and see a profile that you think can match from some of the skills, and then actively try to get people in. This is definitely something that you can do, and I think most of the startups do something like that. So I think that would be another additional measure.
One thing I would like to add from the hiring that has worked very well for us is moms who have taken a break for their little children, bringing them back with as much respect as they had before is something that a lot of companies don't do a good job of. They're not sure about which level to put them at, and they're not sure about how much time they're going to give you, etc. But I think they're hugely committed. They're hugely efficient. I think childcare teaches them that. And I think it's been awesome for us to have some of these women join us, because they've been extremely happy to get the same kind of role that they had before. They've been very committed, very loyal to their teams and company, and they bring a sort of speed and efficiency that people who don't care about when they get home don't have, and can learn from this team. So I feel they bring a lot of diversity in their style of operation, in their style of thinking, and a lot of resilience in terms of crisis. They're not shaken very easily. So they add a lot of resilience to the larger team that they are part of. So I've been very happy uh, to have this segment that I discovered and then really built on, because it has really helped us as a company.
Yeah, I'll just ditto that, Sayali. I think returning mothers, that's a great talent pool to get back. And when it's a second comeback, you come back with a different set of commitment. And I think that's a great. We while we were talking about age diversity, and that's another area that we haven't touched too much, but I'll just sort of add just 1 minute because it's an area of passion. When we look at age, we only look at millennials, but we also have, in India, an aging population like the rest of the world. And the other set of people that I work with a lot, I work a lot with senior citizens who are, they may not just be 60 plus, but they may be people who are voluntary retired. So the population that I work with is between 40 to nearly 80. And it's a community that I've been nurturing, and these are people who, for circumstantially, have quit careers, either their full-time primary careers or circumstantially, and uh, they are also looking at coming back and working flexibly. They may not be looking at working full-time, but they are and that's the other segment that I thought that I'd like. Startups can get a lot of value from them because they're matured, they're experienced, they've been role holders, they're professionally qualified, and they're ready to work flexibly. So that's another advice that I'd like to give startups, that you can even look beyond your age. Don't get intimidated that if I'm a young founder and I have to then work with someone who's maybe twice my age, but it's the ability to be able to translate and tap their wisdom flexibly to help you win. So I'd just like to add that perspective. Yeah.
There is one startup in Germany who is trying to combine these two things. It's called Twice. It's also a female founder, and what she does is she says if women become pregnant, then they go down to 80%, and someone else comes in for 20%, which might be someone who is just of a higher age. And then as soon as the baby is born, then they switch the 80 and 20%, so that the woman that has the baby still keeps in touch with the company, still knows what's going on, and doesn't really get out of the whole thing. And the other person can step up and take over, and then the company at the end has two or one new employee, and can use them for a different just setting. And I really like that, and I think that apply something like that.
I'm 100% with you here. There's also Tandemploy that does a similar job sharing for whatever reason you need to. If you would prefer to spend more time with the family, or you have another hobby that you would like to dedicate time for, why not? I think, as you've all pointed out, it needs to be a conversation where we discuss what are the best options for each individual in their life's conditions right now, and everybody deserves a chance, independent of their race, gender, or age. I think age is a very important, another dimension to bring to the conversation, especially in the startup world, because we don't see many people over even 40 as startup founders and starting their own companies, at least not in Germany. Thank you so much for all of the insights today. I've learned a lot from you, and definitely very happy to be connected with you. Our next step of today's event is a networking session. So my colleagues now will share in the chat a link where, dear audience and speakers, you can join one of the rooms and have a bit more intimate, either one-on-one or a group conversation with each single speaker. Thank you very much for today, and I hope we stay in touch. We support each other in our careers and change the world for better.